Hello, Feminine Roadmappers. It's so good to see you here again today on Feminine Roadmap Inspires. And today's guest is Kristin Hagen. She is an author of the Align Above book series, and her story is one about how a series of accidents redirected her life, which led her on a journey of wellness and eventually brought her full circle to her passions. So without further ado, Kristin, I want to thank you for being on the show today.
Hey, thank you for having me. I look forward to getting to talk with your guests and learning more about my story.
Yes. Well, when I heard your story, I thought somebody needs to hear this. So I invited you to come on. So there's not much else I want to say except for please share your story with our audience.
Oh, I would love to. I began when I was a young child. I began a very talented journey throughout life, and it brought me to where I'm at today. It really brought me full circle. So I'm sure we'll dive into all of that and what that looked like and what it took and how others can join that journey as well. I began when I was 6 years old, very talented in a musician as an organist and a composer. And my parents recognized it early and put me in national competitions. And as a result of that, it advanced my life over a series of years and winning. Just when I was 7 years old, I started winning national competitions. As I progressed through my life and that journey and that constant training with others, I eventually found myself, in competitive dance and pageants and modeling and different contracts. All of that at some point came to a stop when I was just 19 years of age, and I got hit by a first generation airbag that deployed onto my and caused me significant serious injury. It all stopped in a heartbeat. Thankfully, I survived it, but that began a new chapter of this era to really walk through what is this? And no one seemed to understand or know because I'm the original survivor of that airbag. No one had any clue. And so over a period of years, I took my education and tailored it, also worked, and found myself really walking through a blessed path, but one that led me over here to California. And just 7 years ago, I was able to start reversing those injuries that had caused me serious debilitation. Not once, but we'll talk about it twice. And as a result, I have reversed all of the effects of that. And I'm back to where I wanted to be and where I once was on my original journey. So I've been really, really blessed, but had an interesting story as a result of this.
So what was going on in your life at that time? So you were involved in pageants. You were holding a title at that time when the accident happened, right?
Yes, I was preparing for my second pageant. We were actually custom making dresses. I was working with dress designers, and I had already competed in one pageant, and I was getting ready to go into the second one. At that point, life just changed, and the dress designer, had to leave some messages. Kristin, where are you? Kristin, where are you? Life changed in an instant, and I was able to re-pick back up the best that I could, but it was never quite the same until where we're at today again.
So tell me a little bit about that. Was there more than one accident that you had?
I did. So the first one was, I was just 19 years of age. It happened, I believe, on May 1st, 1994. And I was hit by an uninsured motorist. She came down a hill without brakes, and as a result, she lost control of her car. And she had a choice. She could either go into the intersection, or she saw an oncoming opportunity, which is my car, to collide with. And as a result, she chose the latter. She had no brakes, and so she chose to, run into the car. So the airbags deployed, and I knew in an instant I'd been hit by something of serious force and serious reckon. I just knew in an instant I was seriously injured. So I waited in the car. I began to talk about it. I've been injured. Something's wrong. Everybody could tell. It was no longer the same Kristin we had seen all the way up to age 19. Something in an instant had changed, and we were all aware of it. Family, friends, we all knew it. So we'd communicate that. We'd be very open about that and communicate that. During that process of trying to work through that and getting well and on the right path, I experienced a lot of challenges. Even though I knew I was on the right path, I still would experience a lot of challenges just getting the insurance and those to pay for that, understanding that I had all the coverage, all the pieces to that. Just 3 years after that, as I'm working to put my life back together, a second driver was on his way into work, and he was going a little fast for the conditions. It was snowy and icy, and he collided. He lost control, and the passenger door of his side went completely sideways into my hood. And so I knew in an instant to throw my arm up because I had just experienced serious debilitation in my chest and neck and jaw and just all over. And I had just a second to think. And in that reaction, I was able to throw my arm up in front of that airbag that I had a feeling was going to deploy. And of course it did. And as a result, I then carried that debilitation for over 20 years. And so as the years go by and you see my story go by, not only would I keep expressing it and working on it and telling people about it, I thought I was going to get stuck that way. And that was a very big concern, but my heart knew better. My heart knows who I am, right? So at heart, I knew to keep going. It's just survivor instinct, basic survivor instinct. But I would say as the years go by and the decades go by, the impending debilitation shows up visibly into pictures. And that's what's really important about this story is not only was I accurate and right from the beginning, but the cost and the toll that it took me over a period of decades to carry that, to only just try to find my own way back to wellness, and then have to understand that now all that injury that's been added to me, I now have to go through it the other way and reverse every one of these years of debilitation. And so I went as quick as I could when I got to California and could identify the cure to get here. I then had to recognize that realization, and I'll tell you how that injury surfaced, but I then had to reverse it. And that was in a whole nother ordeal to try to reverse every little piece that now you're physically disabled and you need to reverse the whole injury altogether.
So what was the way that other injury showed up?
So as I came into California, I was in school and education, and I was working, and I had my backpack. So I was researching and educating and just going to school. I went into some travel with my family, and we were celebrating my son's birthday, and we decided to go to Knott's Berry Farm in California. So we rode the ride Ghost Rider, and as I got off the ride, everything kind of seemed okay, but I remember thinking, everything's pretty good, but that's enough. I only need to go on that one once. And we went on and went through the park, and everything seemed okay. 24 hours later, I literally was in a whole different place. I had already found a doctor here in California that I wanted to work with closely. And I recall just laying on my bed, and I knew in an instant, this is the prayer I've been looking for. But at the same time, I was severely off the charts, 10 out of 10 pain. So I laid on my bed and I said, I got to talk to my doctor. And I called him. I told him what had happened. He says, I'm going to get in touch with my massage therapist. I'm going to see if she can come over and send her right in. And so he did. And thankfully he did, because that began a really great journey and relationship with him that I was able to not only work through it, but reverse it. I worked with him closely on some osteopathic, just really hundreds of spinal manipulations to put my whole body back forward. When I was initially injured, the pain, caused me to kind of wrench forward. So there was so much pain in the chest and the neck and the jaw and all this frontal area that I literally was, how you splint yourself when you're hurt, you kind of lean forward. That's the position I got stuck in, was like a C. I got stuck in a forward position. So as I say, I come to California, we had to reverse that. We now had to take the spine of the body that's not made to be sitting in that C condition and reverse it all the way back to upright. And so to even know that even exists, I had to go through it to even know that even exists.
That's so fascinating. And how old were you at the time that you came to California?
What was that?
How old were you when you came to California?
It would have been about 7 years ago, so about 38.
Oh, wow. So you're talking 20 years.
Oh, yeah. It was about 25 years before I even found the cure. That's how much of a miracle this is. And I'm the original lone survivor of this. And so I've learned in this pathway that my original story, my original artistry is not only applied into my works and my hands, but it's also an original survivor. So I've overcome, but now I'm working towards coming, that whole original artistry, putting that back into place, because it really took something away from me that I had been working my whole life towards.
And how was that emotionally for you to lose that path that you love so much?
I haven't had a lot of chance to overthink it. Excuse me. I'm just blessed today to know that the path is back. So I'm working today with ice skates and rollerblades and some training, sometimes a trainer. I've put some gym bars back in my house. And I think that that's more your story, that when you lose something like that at heart, and it is who you are at heart, and that's your identity, It's more important than ever that you find who you are, stay true to yourself, and then come full circle all the way back, right? So my heart is into a training mode. I always have been very disciplined. I was raised very well by my parents. They come from a military background, but more importantly, they come from a family of holistic wellness, health, doing what's right, always staying true to yourself. So I carry those principles with me. My family is very near and dear to my heart, but they've been my sole supporters, and they obviously know me from the whole journey, not just a portion of it.
So where did that whole journey bring you to now?
Yeah, so today I have a successful business. I run multiple nonprofits. I also have these books we're talking about today, A Line Above. It's a series of books. I am working today to produce these books into a movie and then go on from there. So I'm a writer by nature as well. I have a lot of gifts, just natural gifts inside of me that I've been blessed with. And I tap into those. I locate them. I find them. I think that's important for a person. But then I tap into them and I utilize them to create things and produce things and make things that not only can I enjoy, but others can enjoy too. So kind of where am I at today? You know, my heart is not only impressed, excuse me, by what I've done. I apologize for that. My heart is not only impressed by what I've been able to achieve and do, but where it's going to take me to into the future.
And what does that look like for you?
Movies, acting, the modeling, putting all of that back in place. I've already put some of that in place today. Contracts are starting to kind of pop back up. I think interacting with people on a face-to-face, not so much technology. I think that's important and it serves an important conduit, but it's being with people and engaging and sharing at the heart, you know, and using my gifts and talents to not only do what I do best, but to work with others who share that same passion. So let's tap our creative industries together or our creative selves together. And that's where the power is, right? Let's see where we take this because we've joined forces.
Yeah. So what is your overall kind of vision from this journey that you've taken from that accident to coming to California to going through the healing? What is your grand vision from all of that? Why do you think it happened?
Why do I think it happened? I don't really know why it happened. I'm not sure if it was to save other people's lives, to assist them if that ever would happen to them. I believe it was more, you know, a variety of things of how that happened. I think that the story's still new enough and being told that others still don't even realize if that's happened to them, how to reverse that until they get these books and have a recognition that, wow, that's probably what happened to me too. And, or if that happens to me, or how do I save a life? How do I do that for myself? So I think some of this information is still new knowledge that is available that others will now seek for themselves. But I think, where do I think it's going to go? I think I'll be heavily involved in the productions back of the pageantry and artistry of music, dance, theater, performing arts, modeling, acting, a variety of genres. The one I'm creating right now is A Line Above. It's based off the series of these books, and it's specific to a certain period of time. One is about my story. That's an important piece to tell and share this story visually so others can not only hear it, but they can see it, and then they can learn from it by the visual understanding of what art form did that take to overcome that. But really what's behind all of that, when this accident happened, I turned into my own skills, and I worked for technology companies and healthcare, and I created my own business years and years ago. And through that process, and my clients that I've been working with for a long time, I've created multiple businesses, and each of them has a writer aspect, or a scribe, you know, is also a component of this. And so because that gift as a writer is inside of me, I also have planned for A Line Above a Renaissance feel. So historic, has a charming feel, you know, but also a historical feel that can you know, emerge with a story that's in depth that people kind of relate to. If you take a lot of times, a lot of these successful series or movies, people are drawn to that kind of charismatic storyline that tells kind of a love story, kind of has that good feel in it. So that's one of my screenplays, is to pitch this Renaissance side of U.S. history, and how did we get the scribe, and how did Gutenberg's press relate to that. And so I think people sometimes just want rich heritage and information, but I plan to draw that out, not just with my own storyline, but working with other creative producers who can share in that same passion. The other one I see as a modern medical television series that deals with specific medical education, holistic health, the wellness, maybe even solving some things. How these all go will be up to the producers. We are querying them at this time, and we are getting some interest. So there's quite a few responses right now that we're applying to. And once that contract comes into place, then the production side of Kristin Hagen will show it.
Now, you talked about your accident. You talked about the second accident, and then you talked about coming to California. Can you talk a little bit about the treatments and that journey, how long it took you from the time you found that doctor to the point that you felt like you were back to the place full circle where you could really engage your dreams again on the level that you had missed for so long?
Yeah, we're really at that point in real time as we speak right now in these conversations. Every day has been a blessing to restore all of this vitality again. Simple things such as turning your neck to the left, to the right, I've been able to restore because I couldn't move anything. I was literally a cement block, the whole neck, chest, the whole deployment of that airbag and the chemicals inside of that caused me to become a cement. And so you got to imagine going into such mobility and dance and execution of that, and then to have that suddenly ripped away. So that was a challenge all to itself. I have done the best I could to be positive through this journey. I am at that point also, though, where I have to recognize when one door wants to close and another one wants to begin. And that in and of itself is always a process of excitement, and you got to remind yourself it's exciting, but you also got to go through it, because the only way you can get to those dreams that are still waiting for you at that original path is to follow through with whatever it is that. And that's what I really have done, is if I have to do something, I have to put something down, I will do it to achieve these goals, because really life is short. And after 25 years of missing some of that solidarity that is true to my heart, let's say it's ice skating, gymnastics, dance, whatever that really innate talent is that's deep inside me, that's what I want to pull out. The stage presence, the important, pageantry, the storyline, the articulation. But to not be able to move your arms, your whole body, your chest, I can't even explain what that is like, but I can tell you that it's important that a person, whatever they've gone through, reverses that or works to find their cure and then continue on. Life is short, and it's really important that we have that opportunity to share our lives with others, but more importantly, be blessed ourselves.
I love that message of hope, because I think there are a lot of people living with chronic pain, and that's what you're saying your journey was for 25 years, was different levels of chronic pain.
Yeah, and I think people sometimes get accustomed to pain and think that pain is okay until you realize and you reverse it, and you're letting go, that letting go process over and over and over again that you have to do. And when you bring in something new and something positive, though it may feel a bit unusual to you at first, you stick with it, because that'll end up being the very thing that guides you back on those paths.
What initially led you to find this doctor? Like, how did you go from being this cement block and having a body that just didn't comply anymore to coming to California and finding this doctor?
We were in Idaho. I'd spent my life there after this accident. I knew I always wanted to be in California. So there came a point where I'd done everything I could possibly do. I was used to a pretty dynamic, fast-paced life. And my husband and I had just really looked at both of our portfolios of work we've achieved and came to that recognition that, you know what, we've done everything that we wanted to do and we set out to do. And we said a prayer. And in that prayer, that's when the action happened. It was so quick. It literally within 30, 60 days, you could just tell there was a more divine presence over the top of that. And doors started magically closing and opening. I was in nursing school at the time, and my husband was also working. And just really unique and dynamic things happened. I happened to lose my grandparents on each side of the move. But through that process, it just kept me on a straight and narrow pathway to keep walking and not worry about what's going on around me. Just keep walking. And we moved from Idaho. I knew I couldn't find it in Idaho. I'd been out there and there was just nothing. Nobody knew what they were, understanding what they were talking about. And so it just came to that point of realization, I've got to move and I want to move. I deserve better than this. And so I moved into California. God provided the way. And so we got ourselves settled. And as I got into just I need something different. It was pretty clear. I can't keep doing the same old, same old. It's not working. So I was well versed on nutrition and education, of course, my former life. So I knew right away where I wanted to go. And it was just a matter of finding somebody that I thought could share in the same beliefs that I do. And as I began researching, I found this doctor, and he had a DO and a PhD. So I thought, great, he's a double doctorate and he has this DO, so Doctor of Osteopathy. If he needs any hands-on care, because I don't even know what's wrong, but if something comes up, at least I found this center. So that was my first clue. And the other major clue was he believed in God. And I thought, you know what, I have nothing to lose in somebody who believes in God and has a double doctorate. And so I found my way into his clinic and his practice, and the two of us, we just shared immediately in that same passion, interest. It was like we were at the same level where, you know, we could relate to one another, we could converse, and we both could share in that conversation. And that client relationship was so important and cohesive to not only being well, but being able to start with some we start with some lab tests, it was called. And we were able to drill in first with nutrient deficiencies on the inside of a person, right? Where exactly am I off? So we started with some basic knowledge like that. And as I went on, and I kind of shared a little bit about going to Knott's Berry Farm, thankfully I had this doctor in my packet. If something was going to come up, I was ready. I believe in prevention. I think that the best way to prevent it is to, first off, not do it in the first place. But second is to, if something happens, then quickly get back to your proactive path, even if that's going to take you decades, whatever it's going to be. I think proactivity is always the best way to deal with things. Second, you've got to solve things, right? So you kind of have to go and be willing to go down that journey and solve things. I think then the final piece to that is, once that roller coaster, I went on that and that showed up, I had him and he knew exactly what to do. So where I might have started, he knew exactly where to pick up. And it was that kind of a dance in life where my book talks about my passionate dance of life, where it was sort of that ebb and flow, give and take. You know, I do some, then you do some. And it was that vice versa, your response back and forth. But to this day, you know, he and I are still very close. He's still right there. And, you know, obviously I appreciate everything that, you know, I've gone through. But more importantly, you know, when I've seen him in recent days, it's all about, like, I agree with him, the blessings to come. What is it yet still? How amazing that you can overcome something like that and then keep going.
So your tool belt really was finding a doctor that you were in alignment with, who could partner with you to get to the wellness you were seeking.
Correct. Mm-hmm.
And how long was that wellness journey?
So for the first 10 months, I started with just the labs. When I first found him, I initially got here, and within 2-3 months, wellness has always been very important to me. It's been my crux of my life. So within 2-3 months, I found this doctor and went in and started with these lab tests for about 8 months. And the roller coaster thing happened that first year I moved to California, about August. So if I came in January, it was by August that the roller coaster and the injury showed up. That became the sole piece and objective of my story for the next 5 years, is just undoing these injuries. So I would go in and out the door of adjustments and vitamin infusions and vitamins and massages and sometimes some yoga and sometimes some exercise, until I was able to rebuild up, you know, to where I'm at today. As far as like, where is it? What does it feel like? It was a gradually undoing. So as you're undoing something like that, something else might pop up. So you just keep working through it like a little knot, you know, one thing at a time, until that knot's completely unraveled. So there's still a little bit of times where I'll still just go, you know, I think I feel great and I'm stretching all around, but I'm also re-waking myself up in different ways and saying, I am familiar with this and I am familiar with this. And then, you know, whatever it is, am I stretching my chest? Am I moving my arms? What am I doing? That just gives me new freedoms. And there's a joy in that alone, of being able to work for something and achieve it, and then know that that's not the end. There's still way more to go. And I think that becomes the exciting part of the passion that's wrapped up inside of it.
That's really cool.
Mm-hmm.
I love the way that you described the fact that it really comes down to the process, the leaning into the process of, it was a whole myriad of injuries and a whole myriad of symptoms and, you know, things happening in your body. And as you start to kind of tap into one thing, it brings something else up. And so that process, did you find that frustrating at times? Did it feel like you were going both forward and backward?
Yeah, and I would talk about that in the book. 2 steps forward, 1 step back. 2 steps forward, 1 step back. And there were times when the doctor was adjusting me and he would say, just trust. And I might sit up off the table and say, I don't know if this is a good idea. And he'd say, no, just trust. Because I was nearly almost killed. The damage to the airbag actually caused me significant sternum damage. So to this day, I can still feel where the damage of that airbag hit. So that knocked my whole alignment off. We talked about alignment and align above. That in itself, I was perfectly aligned, right, doing my competitive, all this art form. That moment that happened knocked my whole universe, if you want to call it that, my whole world off. So literally, not only did the injury occur to the body, and it's visible today, it's the fact that you're taking your whole spine and you've just caused significant injury. Now you've tipped it off, right? You've tipped it off kilter. So that whole world we just talked about that I had to live through, I mean, I did what I had to do. It was what it was, but it was also a piece, like you said, that's like, is this ever going to end? And yet that was my world, so I accepted that world. But as I come out of that world, there's another world that reemerges, right? It's like the butterfly out of the cocoon that says, I am me, and I am me, and I'm going to go forward. I've got dance in me. I am most, I know exactly where I once was, and I am exactly right there today. And I think that that's more exciting than anything, because now it's a conversation with yourself about, well, what just happened? And then it's sort of like God comes along and says, I'll handle that. I got it. Let go of that. This is where you're designed to be. This is where I've brought you. And it's a process then of, but I thought this was me. But then you have to realize that was never me. That was just a part of my life.
And I think it's all a journey and a process, not a destination, right? So your wellness is probably an ongoing thing to keep you in alignment. Is that true?
That's very true. So every day I consistently think about what I want to eat. How much have I had to eat? Have I overeaten? Did I eat enough? Did I have too much of this? I like to keep track of, measurements and metrics and things like that. But I also don't worry myself overly of it. So if I have had extra something today, that I know tomorrow or the next day I'm going to just continually kind of taper off, and life just goes right back where it should. So I think, you should always have freedom every day in your body and in yourself to do what you feel is best for you. But I think at the same token, you have to be mindful and keep that mindfulness, on track of, have I had enough vegetables? Have I had enough water? Have I had enough fruit? Do I need to get some sleep? Or do I just need a tiny nap? Do I need to take it easy? Because as you're coming out of something like that, I think that every day is different. Like you said, is today a little more, a little less? It's okay. And just, there is no, what I learned in life is, and I've always known this, but what's important to note, and I don't think everybody understands it unless they've been through it or they're willing to accept that fact, is our time doesn't have to be the same time as everybody else's time. So to get through it, you don't have to put these excessive demands on yourself. You can just know that today is just as good as tomorrow. And if it takes me, like Noah, X amount of years to get where I need to be, then I'm willing to go with that clock and timetable, because it's going to be the one that's right.
That's such a powerful thought, really, in your journey. But it is interesting that you said at that point when you were injured and everything was thrown out of alignment, at some point you kind of resigned yourself to, this much must be the life that I'm going to be living.
I thought I was going to die like that. So I didn't know I'd ever get well and cured. When I was back in Idaho, one of the things I did, because I never knew if today was going to be my last in that respect, is I would tell people just enough to the forwards of what I thought they needed to know. So if something needed to happen with my business, they would know right where I left it off. They would know right where the next step is. They would know right where the next step off. And in something like that, when nobody has a clue, and I can even go today and I tell anybody I'm an airbag survivor. And you know what the reaction is? A what? I'm an airbag survivor. A what? I go, that recall that's out there? I'm a survivor of that. So to be the sole survivor out and have the cure, and then know that nobody has any clue in these things, if you look back at the historical pictures, to actually see the other damage now, 25 years later, that's hard. That's hurtful. That's hard, because years and years ago, I told the way to the truth, the way to the story, the way to fix that. So it's kind of one of those fine lines of, you start to morally wrestle with some of that and ask yourself why. And that becomes a greater challenge. So I kind of have to then lean on, where am I going to really go as Kristin Hagen? Where am I, the artist, the original survivor, but more importantly, the artist that has an amazing future ahead? The
So
ones
you're basically finding the light in all of that darkness.
Yeah, I mean, I was blessed and gifted from God to be able to write and create. There was never a time that I was to look back, never. And I think even that still applies today, because I think that the gifts come in doing the work. Like, one of the key things in scripture is to always move forward or come follow me. And I think that that's applicable. It's always an action, and you've always got to be moving towards an outcome. And so I apply that over and over in my life, and it makes a very successful and fruitful life, because you're always moving. You're meant to move. You can't really let things get stagnant. And there's always new exciting opportunities. This taught you what you needed to know here, but imagine what it's going to do when you go here. And that's the way I've been living a life like that. And these amazing doors, like I said, started for me when I was just a kid, and just led me down this amazing path that was just so, and I can't even explain it, but it was so artistic and so unique and original, that is a hallmark that I pride myself on, is all of this original artistry and creation I've been able to do today. So I don't ever lose sight of that. And if anything, it works to my advantage and my favor, because I know that's my identity. That's who I am. So I'm always thinking about, I need to be adding in my dance or my art or this, or try something new. But I still have all of the education, the components to go with it. But I think it's a season that teaches us things that will prepare us for what lies ahead. I guess that's kind of how I've seen life work. It's always a stepping stone to something new, or you're bringing something new that somebody else doesn't already have.
And how did your accident lead you to a mission? How is that what voice does that part of your journey have now?
Yeah, so through the nonprofits, I've been able to create American College of Medical Scribe Specialists, which allows other people to document and become a scribe and record people's history. And we kind of talked a little bit earlier about the scribe in the Renaissance era. It kind of allows people to play a bigger part in their life or other people's lives. So not only will they learn what it is like to be a scribe, both in the biblical scribe, but the scribe today, but they'll also be able to help others get well. So I kind of look at the work I've been able to achieve and help others start and advance in their career as not only an important piece for them of what I was able to achieve in this timeline for myself, but where will it take me in the future to tell these greater stories? And I'll still know that other people have that opportunity at any time to be employed and gainfully employed and learn and have amazing education and just opportunities that they wouldn't have had this journey not have happened. I wouldn't have been able to create those pathways.
When you're talking about, this pathway wouldn't have happened if that hadn't happened.
Right.
I really firmly believe that nothing is wasted in God's economy. And I know that we are affected by other people's poor decisions.
Right.
So it's not like, that was supposed to happen, in the sense that,
I don't believe, and I had to look that one over a little bit. That came into my journey a little bit. It's interesting you bring that up. I had to wrestle with that one. Okay, was this really meant to happen? And the answer was no. And the reason why is because that was not natural. That was man-made. That was not God-made. There's a difference between the two. And when something heinous like that happens to you, you have to then ask yourself, is this God-made, literally, resourceful, natural, or is this a man-made result? And in this case, it was man-made.
Exactly. That is totally the best way to put it. Really recognizing that we live in this duality, right? We live in the present moment, where we are impacted by the decisions, the actions of other people.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
and
totally.
That's an individual, independent action and decision that we're sometimes impacted by.
We are. And that's the hard part of this story for me. That's been difficult, because now there's nothing I can do. Though I have my nurse and my training, there's nothing God can do either in this respect of these kinds of conversations when these airbags go off. And if you happen to be behind that and it hits you, and it can cause you not only serious injury, obviously, we're seeing that today since 2014 to see you can look visible pictures of that up today, but you're learning about the deaths behind all that, this occurring deaths that are still happening since even back then. So that's a different story altogether. I know it's an open criminal case, and I know that it's been kind of worked upon, but I don't think it's over. I think it's at the beginning for something. But what about the people that are behind that, as in the people's families, the lives shattered, the people? Those are the kinds of things I don't think people always think about. Or if you get injured, what are you going to do? Or if that happens to you and it kills you on impact, then what are you going to, you can't bring them back. I think that's the biggest challenge I wrestled with this story, to the point where the good Lord was like, okay, you've got to put that down because we've got your arts and talents to go. But I think it's important, though, because it has to be mentioned, because that's also important for everybody else as well, right? It's, what do I do if it happens to me? Or I don't even know where to begin on my journey. So my book will talk about a wellness plan and engaging others to ask themselves those questions. Did something happen? And I think you said, why integrative medicine? I went to an integrative medical center because it identifies the root cause, because something caused something along the way to cause this, to cause that. It didn't just show up. So where along the way, the whole goal of that is called root cause analysis. Where along the way did something happen that caused this, that caused that, right? So you don't just walk into a doctor's office like that. Something happened along the way that caused it to be like that.
Right. We're not at the end of the rope looking at that as the symptom is what's happening. No, it's a clue, right? To go back to something.
Correct. And that was his big thing as we would talk. It's like, no, there's more to this. This doesn't just show up like that. You don't just walk in here like that. No offense, but it's kind of one of those things that something happened somewhere along the way that caused this to look like that, especially overnight. And that's kind of where it was important discovery. And it's good. You need answers to those things or affirmations. But then you've got to go deeper at some point and acknowledge that that is the truth and that is what happened and that is real. And how do you solve those problems, if you do at all? How and why and where and when, right?
Yeah, and that's quite a journey, isn't it?
That's another opportunity or discussion, but it's all those kinds of things in your soul. Then you just have to kind of sort life out a little bit on the table and in your own time, and ask yourself, life is short. So it's, you're this age now and you were that age then, and you've been gifted to go again. What do you do? And I sort of wonder if it doesn't take on over time a life of its own. It may or it may not. It may just be one of those things that happened, you acknowledge it and you move forward. Or it may be one of those things that at different times in your life or different parts of the day even. Today you're going to work on this because this feels therapeutic to your heart. Tomorrow you're going to work on this. And, and that's one of the things that's advantageous of nonprofits. You can do all of those things. And even if you didn't have a nonprofit, you're always welcome to do those things. There's nothing wrong in doing what's right.
And it's such a unplottable journey in some ways, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. It's one of those things that you have to walk that dance. It wasn't the best dance, but it was. It made amazing things that are just amazing. But then when nobody quite knows what really happened and how amazing that really was, and you try to share in that, that's when it hits you. That's when you say, this is not who I'm designed to be. This is Kristin. And then you go forward from there.
So there's a lot about your identity that you were at some point resigned to, this must be the new thing. But you woke up at some point and realized, wait, no, I don't have to choose this particular reality.
Correct. Every day I've always believed you get the choice to say who you want to be. So one of the things that makes my life really charmed is I decide, do I want to try something new? And if I do, and I pursue it with my passion, it's only gone by natural of working on it and, operationally processing through those fundamentals, the technical pieces, going to produce something that's really cool. So I've always known that, whether it's my organ or my dance or the pageants or modeling or my technical career I created for a while, that all leads me to creating something that could never have been created had I not have started in the first place. Once you commit, generally you go through with it, but not necessarily, because sometimes you're exploring and you're taking on things that, yes, like you said, God's going to use all of it. So in his design, none of it my own, he led me to all of these places. He created all of these really cool books and screenplays and whatever's yet to become. That was all. When I look back and I look at the scribe, like I said, of the Bible, and I realize that he's not only talking to me, he is like identifying, giving me clues that this was him all along. And yes, he came along and picked me up, and that was always our relationship, but he's still there today. So of course he's just as excited as you'd expect to be like, come on, we got to keep going. But sometimes you just need that affirmation, like, but I thought this was me. What do I do with this person I knew for 25 years? So for a while, I would sit there and play with my two last names, Kristin Hagen, because Kristin Mock for me takes on a whole nother definition of my identity than Kristin Hagen. So I haven't quite figured out if I want to use both names or what, but I can tell you that I know in an instant when I say Kristin Mock, I know exactly who she is and what she looks like. And Kristin Hagen has a different feel, and that's okay. it's just an acknowledgement that my power lies in Kristin Mock. And that in and of itself tells me that I know if I want to go right back to my dance or ice skating or any kind of competitive form, I know where to tap into that because it's still there today. And I think we never lose our identity, but we do go through things. But then you have to, like I said, parse that down and then ask yourself, who am I at heart? Who do I want to be, or who am I supposed to be? Because you can get back to yourself by making the right decisions every single day. If that's important to you, it's a matter of just prioritizing your life to achieve those goals.
Yes, yes. There's so much what I would call, becoming aware.
Yes. And you can start, it's like, I think life is like those little etch-a-sketches, and you can write on it, and then when you're done, you lift the slate and it's a new paper, and you can write again and you can lift it, like the easy off pages. I really believe life is like that. And every single day you get a choice how you want to have your slate. Do you want to grab that paper and toss it and grab a new one and start again? And then you like it, you want a little refinement. I really see life as an artistry canvas, and you have a palette of choices, and whatever you choose to keep is going to align with your beliefs, and whatever you choose to keep might bring in a little bit different color or flavor. But at any point you can lift that paper and go, you know what, I'm giving this all back to you, and then God, why don't you tell me who I am? Or I'm going to just give it all back, and then I'm going to wait to see what my heart tells me who I am. And that's always a guiding, because it's always there. You always know to listen to your heart. Your heart will always guide you no matter what. Even if you ask, how did you get through it? I don't think at times I thought about it in my mind form as much as I let my heart, because the heart is very powerful. I let the heart do the work. And as long as the heart leads, you're always going to get where you're supposed to be.
Not overthinking everything, right?
Don't overthink it. Yeah, don't get in your own way. That's the biggest key, is don't get in your own way, because we can get in our own way and stop things that the heart would have just led you through anyhow. So it's better to sometimes not think about it, follow the heart, and let the heart naturally, supernaturally open those doors for you.
That's amazing.
It is
Well,
amazing.
Kristin, I really want to thank you for sharing your story today. And of course, for those of you listening, if you will click down below, subscribe, there will be links to Kristin. Kristin's website has all of the information about her book series, all the exciting artistic things she's creating. And I want to thank you so much for coming on today and sharing your story and your passion to help other people really recognize that they can step into their own power and they can
Yes,
reinvent themselves after traumatic experience.
absolutely. Thank you for having me on the show today.
My pleasure. You have a great day. Thank you so much, everyone, for watching. We look forward to talking to you next week.
Thank you.